Oh, that's real good.
Hello everyone, and welcome to our channel Penny Lesson. We talk about everything finance, from tips on making money and proper investing to news about the different economies and situations affecting the global markets. The goal of this channel is not only to teach you how to be more financially responsible but also to teach you how to be more aware of global events. So why not just sit back and relax while we tell you what's happening in the finance sphere? Be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell to be constantly updated on my latest videos. Remember, one penny lesson a day keeps being penny less away. Peter Schiff, an economist, financial specialist, and the CEO and chief global strategist of Euro-Pacific Capital Inc., warns us about why and how the Feds will crash the whole U.S. economy. In this video, we listen to Peter Schiff's own words as he talks about why you cannot control inflation without crashing the economy. They must cause the economy to collapse if they want to reduce inflation and reinstate price stability. Powell was questioned by a senator on his willingness to do whatever it took, like Paul Volcker, to lower inflation. Powell responded, "Yes, we'll go to any lengths." That's not the case, though, because the federal government would have already taken action if it were willing to do whatever it took. There was no justification for allowing inflation to become this severe. The stock market and bond market would have collapsed if investors had believed Powell would do whatever it took to reduce inflation. How Powell will combat inflation without hurting the economy or sparking a recession was one of the topics he was asked. The actual response should have been, "I can't. A recession is inevitable if we want to combat inflation. There is simply no getting around that." Right, when interest rates increased during the terrible recession that Paul Volcker presided over, Powell assured Congress that he would ensure that nothing we did would damage the economy. That is simply not possible. Powell must, therefore, quickly halt interest rate increases or possibly reverse them if the damage is clear-cut, to decrease the balance sheet and raise interest rates carefully, without damaging the economy. There is no other way to accomplish it. However, neither anybody in Congress nor anyone at the Federal Reserve wants to be honest. Powell's promise to do everything it takes to combat inflation is utterly at odds with his assurance that the Fed will take care to ensure that any interest rate increases and balance sheet reductions don't harm the economy, that he is ready to perform it in the manner of Paul Volcker, considering that those two claims are incompatible. Because you cannot take precautions not to harm the economy if you are dedicated to doing everything it takes to battle inflation. You are willing to harm the economy if you are willing to do whatever it takes. This implies that since neither of those two claims can be true at the same time, one of them must be a lie. And in my opinion, Powell's assertion that he will do whatever it takes to achieve his goals is untrue because, in my opinion, he will exercise caution as soon as he realizes his actions are harming the economy or the financial markets. The unsustainable budgetary path that the U.S. is on was the subject of another of Powell's ludicrous remarks. When a senator questioned Powell about whether the Fed had taken that into account, Powell responded that they don't even consider the unsustainable fiscal path. Even so, they don't measure it. They don't simulate it as though this is occurring in a vacuum, which is a deception. I mean, how is it even possible for the Fed to ignore the effect that higher interest rates will have on the U.S. government? Powell also stated that the Fed never considers it. When you put it together with their resolve to do whatever it takes to combat inflation, they won't even think about how that struggle will affect the federal government, which is the biggest debtor in the world and suffers the most from rising interest rates. According to Powell, the best moment to address budgetary difficulties is when the economy is robust. Of course, Powell said the opposite during his testimony. So which is it? Why don't we address the budget issues now if the economy is so strong? We will never be able to solve our fiscal issues because a weak economy will result. After all, it is a bubble because we aren't addressing the fiscal issues. It is exacerbating the financial issue. Additionally, Powell repeatedly said that the extremely low interest rates are the reason we don't need to worry in the short term about the unsustainable path around when they were discussing how wonderful the economy was under Trump. Now that he's admitted that the only reason the U.S. government's fiscal position is sustainable right now is that we had low interest rates, he's saying that he might have to raise interest rates sharply like Paul Volcker to combat inflation. However, he is omitting the impact that would have on the unsustainable fiscal position of the U.S. government. You're telling me that the Fed hasn't spent any time discussing how to reduce this enormous balance sheet, which is one of the greatest issues they're trying to solve. This enormous balance sheet cannot be reduced by the Federal Reserve without causing the entire economy to collapse. They decide against doing it for that reason. They probably don't want to model the effects of increased interest rates on the U.S. government for the same reason. Because if they incorporate that into their model and then perform a simulation, a severe economic collapse will be depicted. So, to avoid facing reality, they will merely ignore it rather than model something they are certain would be a disaster. The Federal Reserve has already abandoned its original target of a 2% average. The Fed will never attempt to average down the extreme inflation we are currently experiencing, without taking into account prior events or attempting to average up to low inflation as the Fed claimed it was doing. The Fed will ignore the staggering increase in the cost of living and only concentrate on ensuring that the additional increase in the cost of living is only 2% annually. The government wished to attribute the pandemic to inflation as well. We could have taken a different approach to the pandemic. We opted to do it because the pandemic served as our justification, and we chose inflation. Consumers to have a right to expect higher inflation, but they are mistaken in thinking it would only be 5.4%. It will be significantly higher than that. Imagine how much more pessimistic consumers would be right now if they knew that this awful problem is set to get significantly worse if their pessimism is based only on the belief that the inflation problem will improve. Therefore, I believe there is still a lot of opportunity for this index to fall even lower as customers become more aware of reality and what is in store for them. Because they continue to hear a lot of government and media misinformation that the worst is gone and that Putin and Russia are to blame for all the inflation. Every time a price rises, the Biden administration and all of its henchmen blame Putin as if the U.S. had nothing to do with it. And they also brag about his price increases. We absolve the Federal Reserve entirely of all responsibility. It was COVID at first, and now it's Putin and Russia, but it's still desired. Every time they discuss the causes of price increases, they point to the pandemic. Either Russia and Putin or rapacious companies are blamed. The Biden administration's animosity toward the oil business is one of the reasons why oil corporations aren't pumping more oil. Investing in the oil and gas industry is unpopular. They are concerned about additional rules. As soon as the oil sector begins to turn a profit, a windfall profit tax is imposed on it. When oil prices are low, however, they are not given any time off for that work. Nonetheless, as soon as they begin to make money, taxes are applied. What message does that convey? The fundamentals are excellent, but gold still has a long way to go higher. Because of this, it ought to be rather evident that the U.S. stock market still has a significant amount of downside risk. Consider the underlying background for U.S. stocks, which are still historically expensive at a time when the Fed is only starting a cycle of rate hikes. But even getting back to tight is a difficult journey. So, even if the tightening cycle is only getting started, values are at an all-time high. A recession is also about to start. The fundamentals are still terrible, even if we quickly resolve the Russia-Ukraine situation, which we probably won't, and they get worse if we don't. Therefore, it's incredible that the U.S. stock market hasn't already declined more than it has. That doesn't mean it won't. It just means that investors are taking their time to realize these negative aspects, which will hurt the price of U.S. stocks in the next weeks and months. Well, there you have it. Schiff warns us about the impending crash that is bound to happen soon. What do you think of Peter Schiff's words? Does it make sense? Do you agree? Or maybe not? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Wow, was that news? Why not ponder it? Want to know the latest? Comment if you want more articles like this. This video is just one of many videos on my channel that brings you the latest news about the world of global finance and economics. So go hit that subscribe button if you don't miss out on content like these. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Thank you for all your support, and I'll see you again next time. Remember, one penny lesson a day keeps being penny less away. Cheers.